Okay, in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to use a constraint layout. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I've created just a text view, an image, and a button. The button's not going to do anything. I'm just going to use it for the layout. So we know that you'll get error messages over here if you don't have constraints. You have to have a minimum of one horizontal and one vertical constraint, right, on each of your controls here. But I find that it works best if you just constrain everything on all four sides. So what you want to really do is you want to think about the design of your screen or your activity, and then get everything in place and then work on the constraints. It really makes it messy if you kind of do it one little piece at a time. So here I'm going to show you, I'm going to select all of these. You can select these by, just kind of dragging your mouse over them, this whole area, or you can control click on each one, but they're all going to be selected. And then I'm going to come up here to the align button and I'm going to choose vertically. And that is going to kind of constrain them to each other. And now you see you still have the error messages here. You've got to then constrain them horizontally as well. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add these constraints. Okay, and when I run my application, that's what it's going to look like, so that's pretty good. I have it set it up for my device, which is a Galaxy Tab A. Now what we want to do is we want to come up here to this orientation, and I'm going to change it to landscape and see what it looks like. So it looks pretty decent in the landscape view also. The more, and I'm going to go back here and change this to portrait. The more information on your screen, then the less likely it's going to look okay in landscape, just because if you have, 4 or 5 things down and you turn it to landscape, it might be, a little squished. So we're going to talk about, it's fine to do that, but you should always check it in portrait and landscape and make sure that you have a good view no matter what you're doing. Okay, I'm going to click on this control here, and you'll notice that up here my margins on the constraints are set to 8 dp. But if you want to make your margins bigger, we don't have to worry about it so much in this example, but sometimes as you're moving things around, you'll find out you have a large margin and a small constraint, and that will really affect things when you change from portrait to landscape. So if one of these becomes bigger, all right, it can be changed, and let me just come over here, and you'll see these layout margins, right? So the end and the start are 8 dp. Like, let me just go to the end here, and I'll change this to, I don't know, 16 dp. And now you see that this is 16, right? Or I can change it. You can really change it to whatever you want. I can make it 40 dp. And now you come down here and you see 40. But sometimes now you'll see this margin is bigger, and now my button seems to be moved over a little bit further. Let's see what happens when I rotate this. It's kind of sliding over to the left and it's not lined up anymore. So I just want to go back and just change it to 8, so it's 8 on each side, and things kind of look lined up. Again, you might end up with bigger margins as you start to move things around your screen. Okay, move this guy. Oh, see here, and now I'm getting a margin, right, of 82. And now when I go into landscape, now it doesn't look good. Back to portrait. So I can click on this, and at the bottom, right, I'm going to change this margin to maybe 16. All right, and let's see how that looks. Oops. In landscape, you know, that looks a little bit better. Okay. So I'm going to come back here, and I just want you, I'm only getting, I'm missing, I didn't put a content description on my image, so that's a warning message. I should do that, but I just kind of put it out here quick for the demonstration. Okay, so sometimes your portrait and your landscape might, you might not like the way this looks in landscape at all, and maybe you want to change it and make it like look a little bit different when it's in landscape. And if that's the case, I'm going to come back here. You can come down. I'm going to go in portrait, and then I'm going to choose to create a landscape variation. Before I do that, I'm going to expand the layout folder, and right, this is our activity main. This is the XML file here. Right, here's our XML file. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to choose create a landscape variation. So what that does under layout, I now have two files. I have my activity main and I have a landscape version. Now what's going to happen in the landscape version is that if the user is running the application and they turn the device into landscape, it will automatically use this landscape activity. So it does it automatically. So remember, my portrait one looks like this. And now my landscape one looks like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of move things around a little bit. And just a second. Okay, so I've got my button here. All right, so let me do this. I'm just going to move the button over here. Okay, I'm just going to, not sure if there's any constraints left. I'm just going to delete or clear all the constraints here. And then these guys I'm going to select, right? I'm just holding my mouse down, right here to select them, and this time I'm going to align horizontally, right? And then I'm going to add the vertical constraints for each of these. Move that guy down there. Okay. All right, and now when I run it in portrait view, it's going to look like this, and then when I run it in landscape, it's going to look like that. So sometimes you could just do it in portrait, and when you switch it to landscape, it looks okay, and that's fine. Then that's all you need to do. But if you want the landscape to look different, then this is what you want to do. All right, one last thing is keep in mind, right, in your text tab, these things all get created for you. This is putting the constraints in for you, right? All of these constraints here, here, here. This all gets created for you based on what you do in the design. So you need to also notice that here's the text view that I put in, here's the image view, and here's the button, right? They're all showing up. You can see their IDs, BTN Practice, IMG Icon, and TXT Practice. And when I go into my landscape, right, these things, and I can look over here, TXT Practice, IMG Icon, right, we're talking about the same things in both views. So if you do this and then you decide, oh, you know what, I want to add, let's say I want to add another button, for instance. I'm going to go to Portrait. I'll drag a button out here. I don't know, I'll just put it right there. Okay. And then let's say that this time I'm going to clear my constraints. Now let's try infer constraints and see how that looks. That looks pretty good, right? But now when I go to my landscape, because I created that new activity, that new XML file, that new button's not there. So I'm going to go back to Portrait. I'm going to go into my text, into my XML, and here you'll see here's my new button that I just created, right? I showed you my text view, my image view, my button. Here's the new button. If you want, you can copy this. I'm just doing a Control-C, and then I'm going to go into my landscape, again into the text, and I'll just add the XML code for that same button, right? Because we want to use, whether it's portrait or landscape, you want to make sure that you're using those same controls. This is going to be important when we start to write code for our buttons. We need to be referencing the same button. Okay, now I didn't constrain it, it's just popped out on the screen here. So obviously I'd have to probably clear these constraints and start over again. So this is why it's a good idea to maybe decide on what's going to be in your activity or on your screen. You know, get that portrait in place with everything that you need and before you try to create a landscape view. Okay? So there you go.